Chapter 1. Elias Ward's alarm didn't blare. It blinked. A faint red pulse illuminated the cramped corners of his remote cabin, nestled deep in Montana's Rockies. His comms had gone silent hours earlier, a fact he had written off as poor weather interfering with signals. Now, he stared at the emergency light, its pulse synchronized with a growing dread in his chest. The radio crackled to life, a jarring interruption to the silence. "This is Dr. Lila Kumar. Captain Ward, if you're receiving this, God, please respond." Her voice wavered, desperation sharpening each syllable. "We need you. They've arrived." Elias's hand hovered over the transceiver, his mind torn. He hadn't spoken to anyone in months, not since retreating to this self-imposed exile. The world didn't need him anymore, or so he thought. The decision was made for him when the cabin's power surged, a wave of static washing over the radio. Then, the transmission cut to something far more ominous, a live feed from New York City. The iconic skyline burned, towers collapsing like sandcastles beneath the shimmering beams of alien ships. The camera jerked violently before going dark, replaced by an alien voice that resonated with mechanical precision. "People of Earth," it declared, its tone devoid of emotion. "You have squandered your existence. Your defiance will not be tolerated. Surrender or face eradication." The screen flickered and died, plunging the cabin into a suffocating quiet. Elias clenched his fists, the heat of guilt and anger rising in equal measure. He had seen devastation before, on human terms. This was something else entirely. Moments later, a knock echoed through the cabin door, startling him. He rose cautiously, his grip tightening on the rifle mounted by the doorframe. The knock came again, more insistent. "It's Lila," a voice called. Elias opened the door to find her, disheveled, her lab coat smeared with ash, and her eyes burning with urgency. She pushed past him, carrying a data tablet tucked protectively under her arm. "Elias, we don't have time for pleasantries," she snapped, pacing as she tapped the tablet screen. "The aliens, there's a pattern. Their energy weapons rely on a centralized grid. It's vulnerable, but we need someone who understands tactics, who can think 10 moves ahead. And that's me?" Elias crossed his arms, his tone cold. "Yes." Lila's response was immediate, her voice rising. "You're the only one who can pull this off. Do you have any idea what's happening out there?" "I can see what's happening," he shot back, gesturing to the now-dark screen. "But I'm not a miracle worker, Lila. Whatever plan you think I can help with, it'll fail. It always does." Lila froze, her expression shifting from frustration to something softer, yet no less intense. "You think you failed before, but this isn't about you. It's about the billions of lives at stake." A distant rumble interrupted them, the faint tremor rolling through the floor. Lila's gaze hardened. "That's them," she said quietly. "They've started deploying ground forces." Elias sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "If I say no, you'll go out there anyway, won't you?" Lila nodded. "Then I don't have a choice, do I?" Hours later, Elias stood in the makeshift command center of an underground bunker outside Denver. The air was thick with tension, the hum of computers and distant orders filling the cavernous space. He scanned the room, noting the blend of military personnel and civilians, scientists, engineers, even a few political advisors. None looked particularly hopeful. A massive holographic map dominated the center of the room, displaying Earth's major cities. Red markers blinked steadily, each representing a location under attack. "Their strikes are precise," a stern voice said. Elias turned to see Sergeant Kara Hayes, her uniform dusty, but her posture unyielding. "They're targeting infrastructure first. Power plants, comms towers. They're crippling us before they send in the real force." Lila stepped forward, projecting an overlay onto the map. "This is the energy grid I mentioned. It powers their weapons, their ships, even their shields. It's all linked to their mothership in low orbit." Elias studied the diagram, his mind clicking into old rhythms. "So, take out the mothership, and they're defenseless?" "It's not that simple," Kara interjected. "Their ground forces are already entrenched. We need to punch through them just to launch anything into orbit. And even if we get a strike team aboard, Lila added, the mothership's interior is a labyrinth. We don't have schematics or intel on what's inside. Elias frowned, his eyes narrowing as he weighed their options. So, the plan is to run headfirst into enemy territory, hope for the best, and pray we don't get vaporized. Do you have a better idea? Kara challenged. Not yet, he admitted, his voice quieter. But if we're going to do this, we need to think smarter, not harder. These aliens, he paused, his gaze lingering on the map. They're efficient, almost too efficient. That means they have blind spots. And we're going to find them. A sudden burst of static interrupted their meeting, the room falling silent as an alien voice filled the air once more. Your defiance is noted, it declared. Your extinction will be swift. The room bristled with unease, but Elias's expression hardened. For the first time in years, he felt the spark of something he thought he'd lost, resolve. He turned to Lila and Kara. If they think we'll roll over and die, they've underestimated us. Let's prove them wrong. Chapter 2. The air in the bunker was thick with tension, a palpable weight pressing down on the gathered soldiers and strategists. A large holographic display dominated the center of the room, illuminating anxious faces with a cold, blue glow. Red icons multiplied across the map of Earth, each marking an alien incursion. Elias Ward stood at the edge of the display, his arms crossed and his mind racing. The plan he had reluctantly proposed hours ago was bold, reckless even, but it was their best shot. The mothership's centralized energy grid was a glaring vulnerability, a rare crack in the aliens' otherwise impervious armor. Exploiting it would mean threading a needle while the world burned around them. We've lost contact with Los Angeles, Sergeant Kara Hayes reported, her voice steady despite the weight of the news. She had just returned from the front lines, her combat armor still dusted with ash and dirt. The resistance there folded after the alien ground troops deployed their walkers. Whatever we send into orbit, it'll need to move fast, or we're done before we start. Elias glanced at her. What about Denver? Can we secure a launch site here? Kara hesitated. The aliens are probing the area, but their main forces are focused on the coasts. If we move quickly, we can reinforce the site and hold it long enough for a launch. Define long enough, Elias said, his tone clipped. Long enough to pray, Kara replied, a faint smirk breaking through her exhaustion. Dr. Lila Kumar leaned forward, her fingers dancing over the tablet she carried. Our window is narrow, but the math holds. The mothership's energy output spikes every 18 hours, likely when it's recharging its orbital weapons. That's when its shields will be weakest. Elias nodded, studying the map again. We'll need 2 teams. One to secure the launch, and another to infiltrate the mothership once we're aboard. Do we have the personnel for that? We're spread thin, Kara admitted. But we got volunteers ready to go. If they know what's at stake, they'll fight. Fighting's not enough, Elias said sharply. We need precision, coordination. One mistake, and this whole thing falls apart. Lila's voice cut through the tension. We don't have the luxury of perfection. Either we act now, or there's nothing left to save. The sun was setting when Kara's team arrived at the launch site, a sprawling complex hidden deep within a rocky valley. The sky above was an angry mix of orange and gray, the distant hum of alien ships like an ever-present storm. Eyes up, Kara barked, scanning the ridges with practiced efficiency. Her squad fanned out, setting up defensive positions and activating portable energy shields. As night fell, the first signs of the enemy appeared. Faint, flickering lights on the horizon, moving with the deliberate precision of a predator stalking its prey. Kara tapped her comms. We got incoming. Estimate 10 minutes until contact. Elias's voice crackled in her ear. Can you hold? We'll hold, she replied, her tone resolute. Just make sure that rocket gets off the ground. The aliens struck without warning, their attacks swift and brutal. Sleek, insect-like drones descended from the sky, their plasma cannons lighting up the night. Kara's squad fired back with everything they had, their bullets and energy rounds carving through the enemy's organic plating. Kara ducked behind cover as an explosion ripped through a nearby barricade. Hold the line, she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. One of her squad mates, a young private named Jensen, yelled over the din, "These things just keep coming." "What's the plan, Sergeant?" "Same as it always is," Kara replied, firing a burst into an approaching drone. "We fight until there's no one left to fight." In the bunker, Elias watched the battle unfold on a monitor, his jaw tightening with each casualty report. "They're buying us time," Lila said softly, standing beside him. "Time they don't have," Elias muttered. He turned to the launch team. "Are we ready?" "Rockets prepped," one of the engineers confirmed. 5 minutes to launch." Elias exhaled, his gaze flickering back to the screen. Kara's team was holding, but barely. He tapped his comms. "Kara, we're launching in 5. Can you cover us until then?" "Do I have a choice?" She shot back, her voice strained but steady. "You always have a choice," Elias said. "Then I choose to win," Kara replied, her words punctuated by the roar of gunfire. The countdown began, a mechanical voice announcing each second with clinical detachment. 5, 4, 3. The ground shuddered as the rocket ignited, its engines blazing against the darkened sky. The alien drones surged forward in a desperate attempt to stop it, but Kara's team held firm, their final stand a symphony of defiance. 2-1 liftoff. The rocket soared into the heavens, its trajectory arcing toward the alien mothership. In the bunker, the room erupted into cheers, but Elias remained silent, his gaze fixed on the monitor. Kara's voice came through the comms, weak but triumphant. "We did it. Now it's up to you." The line went dead, leaving Elias staring at the screen as the red icons swarmed over the launch site. He turned to Lila. "Get the team ready. This isn't over." ##### Chapter 3. The rocket shuddered as it breached the upper atmosphere, buffeted by the turbulence of Earth's dying stratosphere. Inside, Elias Ward gripped the edges of his seat, his knuckles white against the black of his gloves. Around him, the infiltration team sat in tense silence, the glow of their mission helmets reflecting off the cold metallic walls. The hum of the rocket's engines was a constant reminder of the razor-thin line they were walking. "Status?" Elias asked, his voice cutting through the static in the comms. Dr. Lila Kumar, seated beside him, reviewed the holographic display on her wrist. "Trajectory is stable. We're on course for docking. 5 minutes to contact." The rocket tilted, revealing the alien mothership in stark detail, a monstrous, geometric behemoth hanging in orbit like a malevolent god. Its surface pulsed with rhythmic energy, casting eerie patterns of light onto the earth below. "It's bigger than I thought," muttered Sam Greer, the team's demolitions expert. His usual bravado was conspicuously absent. "Focus," Elias said sharply. "You got a job to do." Greer nodded, but his eyes didn't leave the view outside. The comms crackled to life with a warning. "Unidentified object on intercept course," the onboard AI announced. Elias spun toward the cockpit. "Evasive maneuvers now." The pilot, a wiry man named Chun, gritted his teeth. "Doing my best, but this thing wasn't built for combat." The rocket veered sharply as an alien interceptor screamed past, its plasma cannons spitting bursts of searing light. The cabin lit up with flashes as shields absorbed glancing hits, the energy crackling dangerously close to overload. "Lila," Elias barked. "What's the shield status?" "Degrading fast," she replied, her fingers flying across the console. "We need to dock, or we're toast." Another jolt rocked the rocket as the interceptor scored a direct hit. Panels sparked, and alarms wailed. "Hold on," Chin shouted, forcing the rocket into a steep dive toward the mothership's docking bay. The maneuver sent the interceptor overshooting its target, buying precious seconds. Elias grabbed the comm. "Chun, get us inside before they take another shot." "I'm trying." The docking bay loomed ahead, a cavernous opening rimmed with alien glyphs. The rocket screamed toward it, skimming perilously close to the bay's edges. "Brace for impact," Chun yelled. The rocket slammed into the docking clamps with a deafening crash, skidding across the alien hangar before grinding to a halt. Smoke and sparks filled the air, but the cabin lights held steady. "Everyone intact?" Elias asked, pulling himself upright. A chorus of affirmatives came through the comms, though Lila winced as she flexed her arm. Bruised but functional, Elias turned to the team. "We're here. Move out." The hangar was eerily silent as the team disembarked, their boots clanging against the alien metal floor. The air was cold and metallic, tinged with the faint hum of distant machinery. Strange, organic shapes lined the walls, pulsating faintly as if alive. "This place gives me the creeps," Greer muttered, adjusting the explosives pack on his back. "Stay sharp," Elias said. "Lila, where's our entry point?" Lila consulted her wrist display. "The energy core is 2 levels up. There's a service conduit that should get us there." "Follow me." The team moved in tight formation, their weapons at the ready. The corridors of the mothership were labyrinthine, the alien architecture twisting in unnatural ways. The walls seemed to shift subtly, as if responding to their presence. "Is it just me?" Greer whispered. "Or is this place alive?" "Focus," Elias snapped, though he felt it too, the unsettling sensation of being watched. They reached the service conduit without incident, but as Lila began hacking the access panel, the air changed. A low, resonant hum filled the corridor, growing louder by the second. "Movement," Kara Hayes reported, her rifle trained on the shadows ahead. Shapes emerged from the darkness, sleek, quadrupedal constructs with glowing blue eyes. The alien drones moved with predatory grace, their weapons gleaming in the dim light. "Contact!" Elias shouted. The corridor erupted into chaos. Kara's precise bursts of fire took down the first wave, but more drones poured in, their plasma rounds forcing the team to scatter. "Greer!" Elias called over the din. "We need a barricade." "On it!" Greer slapped a charge onto a nearby support column and detonated it, collapsing part of the corridor and forcing the drones to reroute. "That won't hold them for long," Kara said, reloading her weapon. "It doesn't have to," Lila said, the access panel sparking as the conduit opened. "We're in?" The team scrambled into the conduit, sealing the hatch behind them. The narrow passageway was claustrophobic, lit only by the faint glow of Lila's wrist display. "Are we sure this leads to the core?" Greer asked, his voice tight. "It's the best route we've got," Lila replied. "Unless you want to fight your way through an army." Elias led the way, his weapons sweeping the passage. "Keep moving. We're too close to back out now." The conduit opened into a massive chamber, the energy core at its center. The core was a swirling vortex of light and power, encased in an intricate lattice of alien metal. The hum of its energy was deafening, vibrating through the floor and walls. "This is it," Lila said, her voice tinged with awe and urgency. "Greer, set the charges." Greer nodded, moving toward the core. "Give me 5 minutes." "You've got 3, Elias said, scanning the chamber for threats. As Greer worked, the chamber's light shifted, turning a menacing red. A deep, mechanical voice echoed through the room in an alien tongue. "What's it saying?" Kara asked, her grip tightening on her weapon. Lila's face paled. "It knows we're here." The far wall split open, revealing a massive, armored figure, clearly not a drone. Its glowing eyes locked onto the team as it stepped forward, each movement radiating power. "Time's up," Elias said, raising his weapon. Defensive positions. The chapter ends with the team facing their greatest challenge yet, the tension rising as they prepare for a climactic confrontation. Chapter 4. The armored alien stepped into the chamber, the dim red glow of the energy core casting its form in stark relief. Standing at nearly 3 meters tall, its metallic plating seemed almost organic, pulsing faintly with the same energy that powered the ship. In its hands, it held a weapon unlike anything the team had encountered, a staff that crackled with arcs of raw plasma. Elias felt the weight of the moment settle over him. This wasn't just another drone. This was a commander, a guardian of the core. "Greer, how much longer?" he barked, not taking his eyes off the advancing figure. 2 minutes, Greer called back, frantically wiring the charges. "Maybe less if you stop yelling." "Buy me that time," Elias ordered, stepping forward and leveling his rifle. "Kara, Lila, cover the flanks." The alien moved with deliberate menace, its glowing eyes locking onto Elias. With a sudden burst of speed, it charged, swinging its plasma staff in a deadly arc. Elias dove to the side, the weapon slamming into the ground where he had stood moments earlier, leaving a scorched crater. He rolled to his feet, firing a burst at the alien's exposed joints. The rounds ricocheted harmlessly off its armor. Kara, heavy fire. Kara unleashed a stream of energy bolts from her weapon, aiming for the alien's head. The shots forced it to raise an arm in defense, but it barely staggered. In one fluid motion, it hurled a disc-shaped projectile that embedded itself into Kara's cover and detonated, sending her sprawling. "I'm fine," Kara shouted, pulling herself to her feet. "Keep it busy." Meanwhile, Lila worked furiously at her console, attempting to override the alien systems. "I can't get it to deactivate," she said, frustration lacing her voice. "Whatever this thing is, it's running independently." "No time for shortcuts," Elias said, gritting his teeth. He switched his rifle to an armor-piercing mode and aimed for the creature's legs. This time, the shots found purchase, cracking the outer shell and slowing its movements. The alien let out a guttural, mechanical roar, retaliating with a swing that sent Elias flying into a wall. His breath left him in a painful rush, but he forced himself up, his vision swimming. "Greer," he yelled. "Now or never." "Almost there," Greer replied, his voice strained. "Just—" The alien turned its attention to Greer, recognizing the true threat. It began to stride toward him, plasma staff crackling ominously. "Not on my watch," Kara shouted, throwing herself into the alien's path. She fired point-blank into its chest, drawing its wrath. It struck her with a backhanded blow, sending her skidding across the floor. "Lila, help Kara!" Elias commanded, charging forward. He vaulted onto the alien's back, grabbing onto the protruding armor plates. The creature thrashed violently, trying to dislodge him. "Keep it steady," Greer yelled, setting the final charge. Elias gritted his teeth, holding on with every ounce of strength he had. The alien slammed against the walls, trying to crush him, but he refused to let go. "Charges are set," Greer shouted triumphantly. "We've got 30 seconds to get clear. Go!" Elias ordered, leaping off the alien just as it hurled itself backward. He hit the ground hard, his ribs protesting with sharp pain, but he forced himself to his feet. The team sprinted toward the exit, the alien roaring behind them. It surged after them, its movements frantic and uncoordinated. Greer's explosive had damaged its stability. 15 seconds, Greer called out as they reached the corridor. The alien raised its staff, preparing for a final strike. Elias turned, raising his rifle one last time. He aimed for the damaged joint in its leg and fired. The shot connected, and the alien collapsed, its staff clattering to the ground. "Move!" Elias shouted, dragging Kara to her feet as the countdown reached 0. The explosion was blinding, a massive burst of light and energy that sent shockwaves through the ship. The team barely made it around the corner as the core chamber erupted, the energy release tearing through the surrounding structure. The mothership groaned, its internal systems failing catastrophically. Lights flickered and dimmed as the entire vessel began to tilt. "Extraction point is down the corridor," Lila shouted, guiding the team with her holographic map. They ran, dodging falling debris and navigating collapsing passageways. The ship was tearing itself apart, its once imposing frame reduced to chaos. Finally, they reached the escape pod bay. Chen's voice crackled through their comms. "I've got you on scanners. Pods are prepped for launch. Get out of there." The team piled into a pod, strapping in as the hatch sealed. The pod launched seconds later, hurtling away from the doomed mothership. Through the viewport, they watched as the alien vessel disintegrated in a blinding cascade of fire and debris. Back on the surface, the command center erupted in cheers as the mothership's destruction lit up their monitors. General Stanton's voice cut through the noise. "Elias, do you copy?" "We're here," Elias replied, his voice heavy with exhaustion. He glanced at his team, bruised, battered, but alive. "You did it," Stanton said, his tone filled with rare emotion. Earth owes you a debt we can never repay. Elias leaned back in his seat, the weight of the mission finally settling in. We'll call it even, he said, his eyes fixed on the stars. The pod descended toward Earth, the glow of a new dawn breaking across the horizon. Humanity had endured, and for the first time in a long while, hope burned brighter than fear.